Heyo! Welcome to another Team SMG deck profile, guys. Today we're going to be talking about Tenyi. I'd like to first of all start out by apologizing for missing last week's upload. It was literally just because of the traveling that I did over Christmas period to see family. But I'm hopefully not going to miss any weeks anytime soon, because there's a lot of stuff coming with the Ignition Assault sneak peek. I have a local regionals that I'm going to be going to as well, so you're going to be getting a deck profile from that, and I'm going to be filming at the regionals as well. So, that sounds a lot of fun. If any of you guys are going to be at the Reading Regionals in the UK, I'll be there. So, feel free to stop by, say hi. Let's talk about the Tenyi deck. The Tenyi deck is a really interesting deck because of the fact that everything can special summon itself from your hand, as long as you control no effect monsters on the field. They then all give non-effect monsters on the field additional effects. But you have to have a non-effect monster on the field for them to get these effects. So, a lot of the effects are protection type effects. Some of them can be swarm ability type effects. One of them's got a recursion type effect. That's what the main deck Tenyis will do for you. The extra deck Tenyis will gain advantages based on non-effect monsters. So they have a link 3 that makes it so that it can destroy more stuff if there's non-effect monsters present. And then it's got, there's a synchro that will banish effect monsters on your opponent's side of the field. So that's sort of what they are. They're the anti-effect deck, right? If your opponent's playing a lot of effect monsters, then they will work to remove those monsters from the field very quickly. As always, stick around to the end of the video. There will be a combo tutorial. And I'd like to thank you guys for watching. And do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And let's get into it. So, let's start where we always start. We'll start with the monsters. First monster that we run is 3 copies of Tenyi Spirit Adhara. Tenyi Spirit Adhara is your level 1. It's also your tuner. So, what this does is, like all the other Tenyi spirits in the deck, it'll special summon itself if you control no effect monsters. The second effect this card has is that if it's in your hand or in the grave while you control a non-effect monster, you can banish this card, and you can add back a Tenyi spirit from the banish pile. So this is your main source of recurring your resources once you've utilized them. The next few monsters we talk about are our protection effects that we can give to non-effect monsters. The first of those are Mapura. Mapura, he is your protection against targeting. So, if your opponent targets a non-effect monster, you can banish this from the grave or hand. You negate the card effect and destroy the card that was targeting your non-effect monster. Nahada, this is your battle protection. What this does is if your opponent attacks in to your monster, you can banish this from your hand or your grave to lower your opponent's attacking monster's attack by 1500. This sort of gives you the ability to get over big monsters, because you can use this on either turn. You don't have to use this when your opponent attacks. But it can also protect your monsters from battle because of the fact that your monster will now be bigger than theirs. And then 3 of probably my favorite protection effect, Stana. Stana is really good. What it does is, if you have a non-effect monster that is sent to grave, you can banish Stana from the grave to special summon back that monster and destroy a card on your opponent's side of the field. So you actually don't lose anything, and your opponent does, if you have Stana either in hand or in grave when a non-effect monster is destroyed by card effect or battle. The next Tenyi spirit we have is a really common one. It's one that everyone tends to run for lots of different things. It's what kind of makes Tenyi a bit of an engine. And that is Tenyi Spirit Vishuddha. What Vishuddha does is, when it is in the grave or in your hand, and you have a non-effect monster on the field, what you'll do is you can banish this to spin back one of your opponent's monsters. So you banish this, target an opponent's monster, and send that monster back to hand. You can actually target any card, so there were a couple times where I've played this and I've actually targeted back row that I'm not sure about. So that can be really useful as well. And the final and newest Tenyi Spirit that we run is 3 copies of Tenyi Spirit of Shuna. Now what this does is this makes the deck really consistent, because if you can special summon a Shuna and link it off, when it's in the grave you can banish it to special summon a Tenyi Spirit from the deck. And so this makes going into level 8 synchros a lot easier, because you can special summon, say, something like Vishuddha, and then normal summon Adhara next to that, and that'll let you go into your level 8s. So Tenyi Spirit of Shuna could be really useful to allow you to go into your bigger plays, and it allows you to extend as well from the grave, which is really good. And yeah, so this is sort of your big main play starter that the deck has. That does it for the Tenyi Spirits. We run a few other monsters. The first one we run is 3 copies of Gene Warped Warwolf. The reason we use this is a normal monster, so it's a non-effect monster, which means we can normal summon this, and we can then just special summon Tenyi Spirits. It doesn't matter. He also has 2000 attack, so he's a big normal monster, level 4. And it also allows us to go into something in our extra deck that can be quite useful, which we'll talk about when we get to that. Then, because we don't want our opponent building too big a board, we run 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Typical hand trap, you know, pitch it to stop a search. That's really why we run it. And we run 2 1-ofs. The first 1-of we run is Mare. A lot of people will disagree with this. They think, oh, you need to run multiple copies. I don't disagree. Running multiple copies is fine. I run 1 because once it's in the grave, unless your opponent has a way of banishing it off, you can keep recurring it with something from your extra deck. So really, you don't need to run multiple copies, and you don't need to see it in your opening hand, because there's ways of sending it to the grave anyway within the archetype. So Mare you only need 1 copy of. Same with Needhog, Generator of Ice. Now this is a spicy tech card I like to run. You can tribute this or any worm card to negate a summon once per turn. This can be really good if you're playing an opponent whose deck is heavily normal summon reliant. So if they have to have that first normal summon, when they normal summon the monster, you use Needhog's effect, tribute off Needhog, and stop the normal summon, destroy the card, and your opponent now is in a situation where they don't get to build their board. And that does it for all of our monsters. Alright, now we've talked about the monsters, we're going to talk about, guess what? Spells. So the first spell we run directly supports our non-effect monsters, and that is Flawless Protection of the Tenyi. This is the field spell for the deck. If you have a non-effect monster on the field, it can't be destroyed by card effects anymore while this is on the field. Also, if you have a non-effective monster on the field and your opponent special summons a monster, you draw 2 cards. So this helps you recur your hand, because the deck can go through its hand very quickly and often leave you with very little hand advantage. So this gives you a way of starting to recur that. But the main thing it does is it protects the non-effect monsters on the field. The next spell we run is the Searcher for the deck, and that is Vessel for the Dragon Cycles. We run 3 copies of this because it's our main Searcher. It also is a Foolish Burial. So what we do is we activate this, and we can send a worm from the deck to the grave. If we control a non-effect monster when we activate this, we can also add a Tenyi from the deck to the hand. And so what you'll typically want to do is you'll special summon a Tenyi, link it off, activate this, you'll send any worm to the grave. That could be your Mare or your Needhog as well, and then you will add one of your Tenyi spirits to your hand so that you can keep playing. So that's what this one does. So one thing I find you do run into with this deck, as I stated earlier, is that you end up with very small hands after the first turn. So I run some cards to sort of help solve this problem. Tenyi Flawless Protection is one, and Pot of Desires is another. We run 3 copies of Desires. The reason that this doesn't hurt us is because we run so many 3-ofs. The only time this can really hurt us is if, say, we're dependent on Mare or we're dependent on Needhog, and they go. Then we can be in trouble. But For the most part, we're not going to be dependent on either of those cards. They're nice to have, but they're not really a necessary card, so we don't mind banishing really anything from our deck off. The other card we run to help with this is Sacred Sword of the Seven Stars. Sacred Sword of the Seven Stars is trade-in. What you do is you banish a level 7 monster from your hand and you draw 2 cards. So, seeing as both Vishuddha and Ashuna are level 7s, you banish one of them off, you draw 2 cards, and then you can use Adhara later to recur them. So it doesn't really hurt that you've banished them off, especially if you've got an Adhara in hand before you activate this. But the additional 2 cards can be really crucial in this deck. And the final spell we run is, because this deck does quite a bit of searching, we don't want to get ashed, and we also have a couple choke points which are susceptible to Ogre, so we don't want to get Ogred either. This is our way of stopping that. We run 2 copies of Call by the Grave. And that does it for the spells, guys. I don't run very many traps, but I do have a small selection. The first trap we run is the Tenyi counter trap, and that is Fists of the Unrivaled Tenyi. We run 3 copies of this. This is basically your Infernity Barrier. Your opponent activates a monster effect, a spell effect, or a trap effect. You activate this and negate the activation. The one problem is this card does have a bit of a limitation, which is you have to control a non-effect monster on the field for this to be live. So if you have no non-effect monster on the field and you've just got your effect monsters, this does nothing for you. It just sits in the back row. However, if, while it sits in the back row, it is popped, so your opponent destroys it, then you can special summon a non-effect monster from the extra deck. And as I said earlier, we run a spicy tech that every Tenyi deck runs in the extra deck, and that's mostly because of this. We also run 2 copies of Crackdown. This allows us to disrupt our opponent by stealing their stuff. It also allows us, additional materials. So this is just a useful card for us to have, and this deck, just like any deck, can take advantage of it. And the final trap card we run is, again, it's to help with the hands problem, is Waterfall of the Dragon Souls. Now, very rarely do I ever use the effect from Waterfall where you send worms from the hand or field to the grave and draw cards equal to the amount you sent plus 1. However, with this deck, because everything plays in the grave, you can actually benefit from sending all your stuff to the grave and drawing 5 cards or 3 cards. So this can still be really useful, but it can also help you because it just searches a worm. And that does it for the main deck. Now we've talked about main deck, let's talk about the extra deck, right? First card in the extra deck, the lifeblood of this deck, Monk of the Tenyi. We run 3 copies of him, obviously. He's the Link 1. He's any Tenyi non-Link monster. So, you just, any Tenyi spirit, link it off, special summon Monk. Monk has 1000 attack, and no effect. So he's typically the non-effect monster that allows you to keep going. The second one is the Link 2, Shaman of the Tenyi. Now this is an effect monster. This is what always drove people nuts and people couldn't quite figure out. However, Shaman's effect is really useful. If battle occurs involving a non-effect monster while she's on the field, you get to target a card on the opponent's side of the field and destroy it. The other thing that she does, which is absolutely critical, and why this deck has some choke points, is you can send a card from the hand to special summon a worm from the grave. She's also kind of generic in the sense that she just requires 2 worms, so you can make her using Mare tokens. This is the bit of the choke point. If your opponent was to Ghost Ogre this, then you're in bad shape because of the fact that, you can't special summon from the grave, and you end up with a very small board if you've gone into this and don't have a way to keep going. So Shaman is sort of a choke point of the deck, so you have to find ways to play around that. I tend to try and circumnavigate Shaman until the end of the turn, when I've done everything I want to do with the other cards. But this isn't always possible. The next one we run is 3 copies of Berserker of the Tenyi. He is the Link 3 non-effect monster. He has 3000 attack, and he's just a big beefy boy. The one problem with him is that he has 2 arrows that point up towards your opponent's side of the board. Now, while this is a problem now, it could be a smaller problem when the April 20 Master Rule revision comes out, because the extra deck link monster mechanic is being altered. So decks may not care anymore if they have zones being pointed to anyway. We run one more Tenyi link, and that is YuGiOh, Masters of the Tenyi. This is a link 3. This is your big board wipe play. So going second, you kind of want to go into this in some way, shape, or form. What I typically like to do is I like to use multiple monks to get myself to this, because for every non-effect monster on the field and in the grave, if there are no other effect monsters on the field, you can use this to destroy effect monsters on your opponent's side of the field. Now, the other benefit is he cannot be destroyed by battle with effect monsters, so your opponent kind of either has to get rid of it by card effect, or they need to hopefully be running some non-effect monsters. And the final Tenyi card that we run is the YuGiOh, the Berserker of the Tenyi. This is your level 8 synchro, so typically what you're going to do is you're going to use Vishuddha and Adhara to go into this. So this guy is a 3000 attack beat stick that just gets bigger. If your opponent's monster effect activates, this guy will banish that monster, and if this guy destroys the monster by battle, he gains that monster's attack permanently. And he can also attack a second time, so he sort of gives the deck the ability to push for game quite well, and all of that. So he's a really good card for the deck. So that does it for all of our Tenyi extra deck cards. We then run a few generic extra deck cards, the first of which is Naturia Beast. This is the reason we run Gene Warp Werewolf. We also benefit from all the cards being sent to grave, because if we have a non-effect monster on the field, any of our spirits that get sent to grave are going to have effects, and if you can send any of the protection effects, then you'll protect that non-effect monster. So and Naturia Beast will send them to the grave to negate spells. So this can be really good because it can halt your opponent if they're spell reliant. We also run a couple level 8s. We run Borreload Savage Dragon because we produce a lot of links in this deck, so he benefits from lots of different links being in the grave, so he can bring him back, equip himself, and give us a negate and power himself up. So the final synchro we run is Baxia, Brightness of the Yang Xing. So what this does is you can target monsters on your opponent's side of the field up to the number of different attributes used to special summon this. You'll typically target 2 monsters on your opponent's side of the field and bounce them back to hand because you've used 2 different attributes to make this. And the final card we run, which is as I say, the spicy tech that every Tenyi deck runs, is we run 1 copy of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. It's a non-effect monster, so your unrivaled Fists of the Tenyi will float into this. And yeah, that's it. That does it for the extra deck. Alright, so we do actually run a side deck with this. In our side, we run 1 extra copy of Mapura. If our opponent's playing a lot of targeting effects, then we'll swap in the Mapura. The extra targeting protection, this can be a nice card to have, an option to have. We also run 1 copy of Ryokami. He's really useful. He's a big body, 2900 attack. But if every time your opponent special summons something, they have to send something from their extra deck to the grave. But it is super matchup specific, which is why it's in the side deck. We also run a 2nd copy of Needhog. Don't really ever need a 2nd copy of Needhog, but if I've got an opponent, as I say, who is super reliant on their normal summon, being able to guarantee I'll see Needhog by having an extra copy can sometimes be a nice thing. We run a couple more hand traps, 2 copies of Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre is the typical destruction hand trap, so we run 2 copies of that. We also run an extra copy of Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. We run 2 copies of Burial from a Different Dimension. This allows us to recur any of our banished Tenyi spirits, and it puts them back in the grave so we can use them turn after turn. So this could be really useful, but I don't need it every match. Now we run a spicy going second kind of card, and that is Inferno Reckless Summon. So Inferno Reckless Summon, what it does is if your opponent controls a monster, and you control a monster with 1500 or less attack, you can special summon as many copies of that monster from your deck. In exchange, your opponent can special summon as many copies of the monster they have from deck. So what I typically like to do is I like to use this when our opponent has only an extra deck monster on the board, special summon a Tenyi Spirit, activate this, special summon 2 more copies of that Tenyi Spirit, and my opponent doesn't gain anything off of that. So that's typically what I try to do. However, that's not always possible. Sometimes I have to let my opponent special summon extra bodies onto the board. So it is a risk you take. I also run a 3rd copy of Crackdown. Now, if I decide I really need to take something from my opponent, like a Sunlight Wolf, then I might side in the extra copy of Crackdown so I can be sure that I see it so that I can take my opponent's monster from them. Now, because I run quite a bit of back row, and usually game 1 I will have set a card and maybe used it, my opponent might side in things like Twin Twisters. And to deal with that, I like to keep my opponent nice and honest, and play 2 copies of Waking the Dragon. If this gets popped by your opponent's card effect while it's set face down, you get to special summon a monster from the extra deck. So, this can be really valuable, obviously. This gives us 5 traps that float into bigger monsters if popped, and so it forces our opponent to play honest and not attack our back row, which then protects things like our Crackdown and protects things like our negations. So that's why I run 2 copies of this. It just helps me with opponents that have back row removal and keeping them honest. So that does it for the side deck. So welcome to the combo tutorial, guys. As always, this here is going to be our field center. So, the first combo we're going to talk about is a typical combo that will get you into Naturia Beast. So if you're playing against something like Sky Striker, where they're heavily reliant on their spells, this can be a really useful combo to have. So all you actually need for this is, you had a Shuna and Gene Warped Warwolf. You could do this. The way you do this is you special summon your Shuna, you link your Shuna off, special summon your Monk of the Tenyi. You then use a Shuna's effect, banish a Shuna, special summoning from the deck your Adhara, and you normal summon your Gene Warped Warwolf. You link off your Gene Warped Warwolf, and you synchro off your Gene Warped Warwolf and your Adhara, special summon your Naturia Beast. Because you can still control a non-effect monster, you could even banish your Adhara at this point to add back the Ashuna from the banish pile, so that you've got that in hand for next turn. So this is a typical little interaction this deck can do. We're going to talk about some more complicated combos as well. Much like going into Naturia Beast, you can also go into any of your level 8s, really, but typically what I tend to like going into first turn will be my Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. So it's a similar type of combo. You know, you're going to need your Adhara some way, shape, or form. You're going to need any of your level 7s, so either your Ashuna or your Vashuda, and you're going to need any Tenyi Spirit. It doesn't really matter which. The most efficient way of doing this is to have an Ashuna in hand, and either have the Vessel for the Dragon Souls, and Adhara. So, Ashuna and Adhara will do this, Ashuna and Vessel will do this, and Adhara and Vessel can do this. So all 3 of these are options of how to do this. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways of doing it. First way, we'll do with Ashuna and Adhara in hand. You special summon Ashuna, link Ashuna off. For your link 1, you banish Ashuna, special summon from your deck Vashuda, normal summon your Adhara, synchro both of them off for your level 8 synchro. As I say, I tend to go with Draco, but there are other ways to go with it. Doing this with Adhara and Vessels would look more like this. special summon your Adhara, link off your Adhara for your monk, activate your vessels, sending a Shuna from the deck, and adding Vishuddha from the hand to the deck. Sending a Shuna to the grave, and adding Vishuddha to the hand. Then you're going to want to special summon your Vishuddha. Then you're going to want to activate your Ashuna, banish your Ashuna, to special summon from the deck your second copy of Adhara, and then you synchro off into your Monk of the Tenyi. So, into your Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, or any level 8 synchro that you would like to synchro off to. So this is how you can sort of incorporate your synchros. The next thing that you can do is, because that's only taking 2 cards from your hand, what you could do is you can then link into the link 2 Shaman of the Tenyi, because they're both worm monsters. And you can pitch any worm from your hand, special summon this back. So that's another way you can keep going up. So this gets you to your link 1 with a synchro. There are other ways of doing this, obviously, and some of that comes with playtesting. So sorry guys, you're gonna have to figure that one out, some of them out yourself. Another option that you can do is obviously utilizing your Mermer. So we're gonna say we're gonna leave Mermer on the deck. We're gonna say we have the easiest way to utilize your Mermer is using your Vessel of Dragon Souls. And we'll say Vessel of Dragon Souls and Ashuna, because Ashuna is sort of the best Tenyi spirit to have. But you could do this with any Tenyi spirit, you're just not going to be able to extend just quite as far. So, what you're going to do, special summon Ashuna, send Ashuna, link off Ashuna for your link 1, activate your vessel, you're going to search out a Tenyi, and you're going to send from the deck Mermer. So we're going to search out the Adhara, because I find the Adhara can be quite a useful card, because it lets you recur your Ashuna for next turn. Alright. At this point, you're going to special summon your Adhara. You're going to link off to the link 2. Then you need a card in hand, any card, pitch the card. To special summon yourself your Mermer. So I special summons your Mermer. And then you're going to use Mermer to generate 3 tokens. And this is why a lot of people like the Mermer variant of this deck, and they like to have lots of Mermers. You then use Mermer, Shaman of the Tenyi. And this is really good when you go second, because at this point, you're about to get a board wipe on your entire opponent's field by going into Draco Masters of the Tenyi. He will destroy monsters equal to the number of non-effect monsters you have on the field and in the grave. So, because we've got 1 monk in the grave and 3 non-effects on the field, we destroy 4 of our opponent's effect monsters. So, once you've got to this point, you can kind of still do whatever you'd like to do. You can go link 2. Into your Shaman, and then link 3 into Berserker if you wanted. And that would give you the ability to, hit your opponent for 5,600 to attack. The final play I'm going to show you guys is the one which gives you Needhog on board, because having Needhog on board and stopping that normal summon can be really good too. So the way that one works is, again, using an Ashuna and a Vessels. Start off, you're going to special summon your Ashuna, and you're going to link off your Ashuna for the link 1. Then you're going to activate your Vessels. And instead of sending your Mermer, you're going to send your Needhog. You're going to search out your Tenyi Spirit. Then you're going to use Ashuna banish off your Ashuna, special summoning from the deck another Tenyi Spirit. Oh, it's engrave. So summoning from the deck another Tenyi Spirit. So from here, you're going to link 2 into your Shaman. You're going to use Shaman's effect, sending whatever it was that you searched to special summon back from grave Nidhogg. That does it for the combos, guys. Alright, so my final thoughts on this deck. I think the deck's really fun. It allows us to play through hand traps because of the fact that the whole deck special summons itself. There's the one limitation, obviously, is if they Ghost Ogre your Link 2, you can be in trouble because that can be a choke point for a lot of combos this deck likes to go through. The deck can special summon a lot. It swarms the field quite well, especially with the addition of Ashuna. It's a bit of a utility deck because you can sort of react to whatever it is your opponent is playing and whatever it is your opponent is doing. Because you just alter whatever Tenyi spirits it is that you want to play with using vessels and using Ashuna. I like it. I think it's really good. As I say, the deck can go through its Link 1s really quickly as well, so you sort of need to be prepared to have all 3 copies of your Link 1 in the deck. The Link 2s are really useful because you can link off some of your bigger stuff into your Link 2 and use your Link 2 to special summon that back. Then, you're going to use your Link 3 to push for game or to break your opponent's board. And then, obviously, the big game pusher is going to be your level 8 Synchro. So, the deck can push for game quite well, but it plays better as a bit of a control variant using the Tenyi's engrave to limit what your opponent's board looks like and then slowly whittle away life points. Pushing 4 game all in one go, OTKing with this deck can sometimes be a little difficult, depending on how you try and go about it, obviously. Anyway, so I hope you guys have enjoyed the profile. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys at the next profile.